the stuff that I have seen on the internet in the last couple of days. It's crazy. People are freaking out, thinking that the sky is falling. The stuff that the consumers say, oh my goodness, like bashing on us poor real estate agents. I don't know when it became so acceptable for people to say all kinds of hateful stuff about us just trying to earn a living. We're not trying to trick anyone. We're not trying to steal their money. We're trying to help people. And yet it seems perfectly okay for them to just bash on us as a profession and say all kinds of hateful things. I've seen all kinds of ridiculous claims too. I saw an article on CNN on Friday where they said, that's it, house prices are going to come way down. I'm like, really? How do you think? How do you feel that that's really going to happen? I personally don't see it. I don't think that because the seller is not contractually obligated to offer compensation to the buyer broker, that automatically means house prices are going to fall or that interest rates will drop. They have nothing to do with each other. I don't see how that's going to happen. I think that we are still, like, people that are saying this has killed the real estate industry, those people don't know what they're talking about. I mean, like, do you remember when Zillow first came? Well, okay, let's talk about when the MLS went digital. Back when there used to be like a giant book that was 2 inches tall and you went into the office and you flipped through the book. And then when it went online, they said, that's it. There's no need for real estate agents. We're cut out of the transaction. We're done. That did not happen. When Zillow came on the scene, oh, there's no need for us anymore. The buyers can look online and pick out their own houses. They don't need us anymore. That did not happen. Things like Purple Bricks and Open Door and all of these things that came along. Oh, that's going to put the real estate agents out of business. They don't need us anymore. None of those things have come to fruition. So I want to encourage you to don't read all of those stupid news articles that are not put out by real estate groups. Okay. Don't read them. Don't go look at all of the ridiculous things people are saying on the internet. If they are not a real estate group, they don't know what they're talking about. They came up with this whole class action lawsuit in the first place because they said that we were price fixing. We were not. They said that it was antitrust. It was not. The claims that they made were 100% bogus. And you know that because you know that there is no such thing as a standard commission. And you know that every commission is negotiable. But part of the problem that we got into, I believe, is that as real estate agents, when we get on social media, and I know I'm not talking to you guys, we're talking to the other people. They get on social media and they're like, I just sold another house. It went pending with 17 offers and I just made my seller so much money. And, you know, you're wearing your fancy clothes, driving your fancy car. We have made it look so easy that it's no wonder they don't think that we do anything to deserve that money, right? We made it look like we drove up, we unlocked the door. They said, I love the house. And I said, great, let's offer 500,000. Oh, that's not enough. Okay. 550. How about 600? What's your max price? 700. Okay, good. Let's offer 700. Yay, we got it. And then we collected a big fat commission check. That's their perception of us because we've kind of perpetuated that as an industry. Instead, you need to show them how freaking complicated a real estate transaction is. I was talking about this with my husband over the weekend. I said, of all of the deals that I've closed, I mean, I'm a CRS and you have to have sold 150 just to apply for a CRS. And it's way beyond that. It's got to be in, I don't know, 300s, 400s at this point over almost 19 years. And I said, of all of the deals that I've done, how many of them have I ever said they were so smooth? It closed without a hitch. It was smooth sailing the entire time. It was perfect. And how many did I say, you're not going to believe what happened today? And he's like, oh, they're always like that. I said, yes, it's the exception when the deal goes totally smooth and has no problems, isn't it? Usually there's something that goes wrong. Your buyer's loan gets denied 3 days prior to the closing. Or you have a car crash through the front of the house after we went to the escrow company and everybody signed documents, but before the money changed hands. Crap like that happens in the real estate transactions all the time, but we don't bring it to the client's attention, to the consumer's attention. We tend to like hide them from we shield them from all of that stuff because I am the professional. I will take care of it. I want to shield you from the stress so that you're not the one on the ledge going insane. Then as a result, they don't see how hard we work and what we do. So let me just tell you what I think about all of this. And as somebody who was terrified to use a buyer representation agreement for the first 9 years or so of my career, and now someone who 100% uses it every single time, no exceptions, I feel like I have a really good handle with both sides of the coin. So when I was too afraid to ask for it, part of it was fear, absolutely. But part of it just was that it was not normal. Nobody in my area, when I lived in Solano County, California, nobody got a signed buyer representation agreement up front. You would meet the buyer. They would say, I want to work with you. You would go out and you would show them all of these houses. Nothing was in writing. Nothing was signed. And when they found the right house and they were ready to write an offer, you would slip that buyer brokerage agreement into the pile of stuff they were signing. And only then did it even come up in the conversation. That is how I operated for the first 9 years. Not only because that's just kind of how they did it, and that's who trained me, that's who I learned from, but also I thought real estate agents are a dime a dozen. And what if they say no? What if they say, no, I don't want to sign that document. I'm not going to commit to you. Then what would I do instead? And because I was relatively new to the industry, I didn't have a good answer to that. I didn't know how to handle that objection. Now, as somebody who says, it's so nice to talk to you. So how did you find me? Oh, from my YouTube channel. That's awesome. I get so many clients from a YouTube channel. Like, that's seriously the best thing that I've ever done. But here's the deal. I only work with clients who agree to hire me for my services and they put it in writing because I have so little time available now. I can't work with everybody. I have so many people that have come to me that I have to give my priority to clients. I explain to them the difference between a client and a customer. And I say in my business, I have chosen not to work with customers simply because I don't have the time. There are not enough hours in the day. So if you want to work with me, I would love to have you. Here is how you become a client. We put it in writing. This is what we do. Now, in my personal business, I have never charged the buyer before, even though in my state's buyer brokerage agreement, it clearly says the buyer will pay blank for services rendered to the real estate agent. And so I would write in as per MLS agreement. And then in the notes section, I would explain how that works. The seller's agent agrees to pay the buyer's agent. They will put the terms in the MLS. If it is a lower percentage, my choice was that I did not pass that difference on to the buyer. So back up. When I first heard about the lawsuit, I thought, I can't even believe the things that they are alleging. They are 100% not true. And I would argue until my dying breath that there is no price fixing, that there is no artificially inflating the cost of real estate with the commissions. That's like saying I need to go to court and I need to hire an attorney, but I don't want to pay you and you should do it for free because I deserve it and you're a nice guy. That's just stupid. You hire professionals for their knowledge and their expertise, and to expect them to do it free of charge is just dumb. I mean, there are people that can't afford to, and maybe the person would say I would do it pro bono, but for that to be the norm and to be expected, it's like, oh my gosh, this whole entitled attitude drives me crazy, right? So the things that they were alleging were silly. Then when we lost the lawsuit, it happened right before I went to the NAR National Convention in November, and there was so much talk about it. And they're like, we're going to fight it. We're going to fight this tooth and nail. We're going to fight it. But now I guess they've just said, okay, enough is enough. We're bleeding money. Let's come to a resolution where we can move past this. And I know a lot of, not a lot, because of all the copycat lawsuits. If you're with one of the brokerages that is involved in the copycat lawsuit and they have not settled yet, I'm sorry. I don't know what that means for you. For brokerages that have already settled, awesome. NAR basically just said, we wanted to do this to protect our members to the best of our ability. Then we were like, well, how is that all going to work for the sellers? So are we going to start getting those postcards in the mail that say, did you sell a house between 2018 and 2022, and you feel like you got the shaft when it came to pay, opt in here to be part of the class action lawsuit? and then you're going to make like $7 from the class action lawsuit because so many people opt into it. I don't really know how that all works. I'm not an attorney. There's always somebody trying to make an easy buck. And I hate that I have been the easy target for them, that these ambulance chaser attorneys think that we're just greedy and we don't do anything to earn the money, because we all know that it's insane how much we work. I will tell you, I never worked longer hours in my life than when I was selling real estate full time. Like when I worked in 9 to 5 corporate America, I was out the door at 5 o'clock. That was it. I did not think about work again until I went back to work the next day. I had my whole weekend to myself where my phone was not blowing up. I wasn't stressing about it in the evening. That is not the case when you're selling real estate. You work way harder and way longer hours. And if they only knew, they would realize how silly these allegations were. So now with the new rules, and I'm sure you've all read it by now, so I don't need to go into great detail, there will no longer be an offer of compensation in the MLS. So it's not going to say the compensation is 2%, 2.5, 3, 4, whatever it may be. It won't be in there at all. You will not be able to slide it into the confidential remarks. You will not be able to put it anywhere in the MLS. What I've been told is that you can still put it in showing time. You can still put it on your website. You can still put it on the brokerage's website where you were talking to other real estate agents within your own brokerage. As I understand it, that will all be allowed. It just will no longer be offered in the MLS. The seller is still allowed to pay the buyer's agent. That is totally fine. They just can't put it on the MLS. Now, if you're a listing agent and you go to their house and you do your whole listing presentation, before this happened, what did you normally say? I would say, Mr. Seller, this is how much I recommend that you offer to the buyer's agent. Here is why. If you offer significantly less, you're putting your home at a competitive disadvantage. I would like to think that no agents will go down the list and look at homes and decide which ones to show their clients based on how much they're going to get paid. But if in our area there is a typical range of commissions and the one that you're offering is significantly less than that, I worry that we're not going to have as many people come and see your house. You are doing your property a disservice should you choose to do that. Now, are you required to pay them? No, you are not. However, this is what I suspect will happen should you choose to do that. I would recommend, if you want so many people to come and see your house, that you agree to pay the buyer's agent. And in my experience, having sold, hundreds and hundreds of houses in my experience, this is what I would recommend. That would be, you can still have that conversation with your seller. If the seller says, nope, not going to do it, not paying them at all, okay, that is their decision. If you're the listing agent, you're going to have that conversation with your client and decide how you want to handle it. If you are representing the buyer, you're now going to do a buyer presentation at the first meaningful conversation. So when it comes to our YouTube people, right? They watch the videos, they start commenting on your videos, and then eventually they reach out to you. They either call you, they send you an email, they go to your website, they fill out a form, however it happens. What I have always done, let's say I get an email. It's a 3-page long email where they tell me everything about them, right? I love those emails. What I would do is respond and say, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. I'm so excited to talk to you. What is a good time for you? Like, is 7 p.m. Eastern a good time? I would love to do a Zoom call with you. And when I do the Zoom call, I'm getting to see them face to face. We talk a little bit about their time frame and their motivation and all of the things, getting them very excited about this upcoming move. And then I say, I would like to share a presentation with you. It's only about 10 minutes long, but it's going to tell you exactly what it is that I do for you, how I can help you. And I'm going to explain to you how I get paid. When I represent you to buy a house, I'm going to tell you all of this stuff so that nothing is a surprise and you understand exactly how that works. Would that be okay? And of course they say yes, because that's why they contacted you, right? So you're going to need to have a killer buyer presentation going forward. If you don't have one, it's time to make one, right? This is not a charity. We do not work for free anymore. This I actually think is a very good thing for our industry, because I look back on those first 9 years. I can't tell you how much time I worked for free. How many times I worked with this client and they went into an open house and they wrote an offer with the agent who was hosting the open house because I didn't have them under an executed agreement, and I didn't explain to them what that means. And when they found out that they were basically just stiffing me out of the transaction, they felt terrible, but it was because I didn't explain it to them. That's 100% on me. So we don't do that anymore. Now we're going to explain it. So there's now a couple of different ways it will happen. You can say, I'm going to ask the seller to pay my fee. I typically charge blank percent. I'm going to ask the seller's agent to pay that fee, the seller to pay my fee. And in a perfect world, they will say, yes, I would be happy to, because you brought a qualified buyer who bought my house and it's going to close and it's all going to be amazing. Option number 2 is they say, no, I'm not going to pay you a dime. And then that falls to you, the buyer. So this is how much I charge for the services that I provide. And in this price point, this is what we're talking about. Now, are there other ways that we can get that as well? Could we ask the seller to give us a credit, which would then pay? It's just a seller concession, the same way that they would give me a closing cost credit, the same way that they would pay for a home warranty, the same way that they would buy down my interest rate. It's just a seller concession. We can go that route. I suspect we're going to be able to see rolling the agent's commission into the closing costs before too much longer. Fannie, Freddie, HUD, VA, they all have to get together and figure this out. But I don't think it's going to take too long before we start seeing that happen. So if the seller says, no, I'm not paying you $1, and the buyer says, I'm a first-time buyer, I barely have my closing costs and my down payment, I can't pay for that as well. I suspect we're going to see that. How long that will take, I don't know, but that's my prediction, is that they're going to roll that in there. In the VA right now, it says that the buyer is not allowed to pay the commission of the agent that represents them. So that can't continue forever, right? That would mean that no buyers could buy a house where the seller was not offering to pay the real estate agent and use their VA entitlement. Like I just don't see that staying that way. So that's my prediction. I think that's going to happen down the pike. So option number 1, seller pays it. Option number 2, buyer pays it. Option number 3, the seller pays part of it, and whatever is left over would fall to the buyer. Now, should that happen, I'm going to come up with like a net sheet. I'm going to show you exactly what it would be, and then you and I will make a decision how to go forward. Does that sound reasonable? And so they probably are going to get a little bit skittish of like, oh, I need to pay your fee if they're a first-time buyer and money is scarce. If you're talking to somebody who is older and has bought and sold houses many times before, they've done this on the listing side. It was not a shocker. On the buy side, they're probably not going to be completely horrified, because they're like, oh, yes, of course. You have to get paid somehow. You as the realtor do not work for free. Someone has to pay you. We're always going to ask the seller first. We're always going to ask, can the lender give a credit? Is there any way that we can pass this cost on, not to have to be part of the buyer? But if they all say no, then it's going to fall to you as the buyer. And then we're going to have to make some decisions. Do we want to pass on this house and go to a different house? Or are you going to be able to save up more money so that you can pay that fee? So going forward, we're going to have an amazing buyer presentation. You're going to tell them everything that you're going to do for them. You're going to tell them all of the things that can and will go wrong, and how you have a plan to overcome those things should they happen. I'm going to have a plan in place ahead of time so that we don't get the loan denied 3 days prior to the closing. This is how we're going to prevent that. We're going to need to be so clear on your killer UVP. Now, I talk about that all the time for your YouTube channel. It's got to be a lot more than I help you buy a house. It's got to be a lot more than I help you relocate to a new area. It's got to be a lot more than that, because they need to know that you are worth every penny of what you are charging. And if, unfortunately, the seller's not going to cover that 100% and they have to pay some of it themselves, that they are not only willing to do it, they will be glad to pay it because of the excellent care you gave them during this transaction and how you were able to help them so much. Because listen, all these buyers who say, I just can't afford to pay it, and the seller won't pay it, and so I'm going to go it alone. How many lawsuits are we going to see in the future of the buyer going again or suing the seller and the listing agent, saying, you didn't tell me, I didn't know, you didn't disclose, I didn't know what I was signing. These poor buyers are going to be left hung out to dry. We need to convince them that it's not a good idea to go it alone. You need to hire a professional. You would not, the people who represent themselves in court, what do they always say? A person who represents themselves in court has a fool for a client. It's the same in the real estate transaction. You don't know what you don't know. There is so much in every single transaction that you don't have any idea how to deal with it when that stuff comes along. We've been doing this for years and years and years. We've seen a lot of things. We haven't seen it all, but maybe we have seen that before. You're not going to have the faintest idea what to do. You're not going to know. What about the states where you have the due diligence fee, where you pay that up front? And then if you cancel the transaction, you still lose your due diligence fee. Like, people need to be able to explain to the consumer the ramifications of if you decide to go it alone. You also need to think about who exactly is your ideal target audience. Probably going to make your life a lot easier if it's someone that can afford to pay you, that you don't have to try to convince them why they need a real estate agent. If you're trying to convince the person why they need to hire an agent, why they shouldn't go it alone, and why they should be willing to pay for it, it's going to be a lot more difficult than if you're talking to people who are already your ideal best client. They know how valuable you are, and they are willing to pay for it. So we're going to work on creating a killer buyer presentation. You're going to practice it. Practice it over and over again. Give it to your spouse, give it to your sister, give it to your mom. Pick somebody and say, can we do a half-hour Zoom call where I'm going to give you my buyer brokerage agreement or buyer broker presentation, and then you give one to me and we'll critique each other. You've got to be able to say these things with total confidence and not be like, oh, like, I'm going to have to charge you money. I know it's terrible. I'm really sorry. Like, who's going to want to pay that? But when you say, I am going to do this for you, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to get you the house that you want at the terms that you want. I'm going to help you so you understand every single thing that's happening. You're never going to feel confused and not understand how this is all going down. Like, I am here to literally hold your hand every step of the way. I'm a professional. This is what I've done now many, 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 many times. I am the right person to help you. They're going to feel like, oh, finally, somebody who actually has a clue. Because think about it. I was just on a Zoom call earlier with my brokerage, and they said, so many people are very used to, if they're selling their home, they don't necessarily just go with one person, right? They interview several people. They say, I want to sell my house. I'm going to interview 3 or 4 real estate agents. And all those people come to the house and do their presentation. And then they have to try to decide, which person do I think is the best one to do the job? Buyers rarely do that. Rarely. I mean, I could probably count on 2 hands in 19 years how many times that has happened to me. Usually they go with the first person that they talk to. Why? Because they didn't have to come out of pocket to pay for the services most of the time. So if they're not paying for the services, it didn't really matter who they chose. It could just be anybody who was nice and, was readily available. Now that's not the case. If they're having to pay a portion of it, not necessarily all of it, but let's say they're going to pay a portion of it, they're going to be much pickier about who they use as their agent, as they should be, right? You're hiring someone to help you in the biggest financial transaction of your life. You should have someone who knows what they're talking about. And this is probably a very good thing, because even in the past, I don't know that buyers really understood how we got paid. They were like, oh, you work for free? That's amazing. Well, we don't work for free. We just didn't make the buyer pay the fee. But I think there's been all of this very ambiguous language in the real estate industry all of this time. And now this is an opportunity for us to remedy all that. And so if you are a newly licensed agent and you're freaking out right now because you're thinking, oh my God, did I just make the worst decision ever going into real estate? That's not the case. You want to educate yourself as much as you possibly can. No, maybe you don't have a ton of experience under your belt yet, but you can spend all of this time learning and understanding and being able to explain it to somebody far better than someone who's like, well, I've been in the industry for 25 years and this is the way we've always done it. And they can't explain it because they've never bothered to really level up their skills. You and I know people like that all the time. This is the way we've always done it. But when you say, but why? They can't explain it. I live in a state where when I first got here, they said we live in a buyer beware state, which means when you're buying the house, good luck. You better figure out everything that's wrong with that house because the seller's not necessarily going to disclose it. I was like, what are you talking about? I moved here from California where we had like a 3-inch thick file of nothing but disclosures. And when I moved to Georgia, they said that's not really how it works here. You're going to need to know your contract inside and out. Learn that buyer brokerage agreement, that buyer representation agreement inside and out. Practice giving this presentation to a buyer so that they are so excited to hire you and they think that you are the most professional person they have ever dealt with before. It's going to be awesome. Just my recommendation is don't jump to conclusions. Don't assume that the world is falling. Don't assume that 1 million people are going to leave real estate. That was another one that I saw. What else did they say? They said home prices are going to go down. Interest rates are going to go down. 1 million people are leaving real estate and the real estate industry is dead as we know it. So many ridiculous claims. I'm like, who is saying this stuff, right? So you guys are the cream of the crop here. You guys are the ones that are continually going out and making all of this YouTube content to educate the consumers and explain to them how all of this works. I think you guys are in a really good position because you've already hopefully been doing this. And if you haven't been doing it, start now. Don't put it off any longer. It is very, very important for you to get ahead of this, start making content where you are explaining to the consumer how this all works and why they need to hire a professional real estate agent to help them with all of this stuff. And then when they reach out to you, it's going to be so much easier having that conversation because they already know, like, and trust you. They already see your value. You don't have to convince them. That's why they've already reached out to you. You are not calling them. They are calling you. It's such an amazing business model. I think it's going to weed out a lot of agents. And I don't mean like, yay, we're going to see 1 million real estate agents leave the profession, more business for me. But the ones who were maybe not so ethical, the ones who did not care about leveling up their skill, the ones who just did it because they wanted to make an easy buck and they really didn't do it with a heart of wanting to help the consumers. If those people leave, I won't cry too much about that. You know what? I've been doing this long enough now that I've seen up markets and down markets. I've seen software come along that they said was going to disrupt the industry and it didn't. It just changed the way we got there. In fact, the president of the brokerage that I'm with did a Zoom training and he said, I live in Laguna Beach, California, and LA is up here. And if I go into my GPS and I say, I need to get from here to here, it says, well, there's this route and there's this route. If you take this route, it's 56 miles and it will take you 1 hour and 12 minutes. And if you take this route, it's actually 52 miles, but it will take you 1 hour and 9 minutes. So it's a 3-minute difference whether you go this way or this way. But guess what? You all end up at the same destination. And I thought that was a very good analogy because we're going to change the way that we do business. We're going to change the way that we get paid, but it doesn't necessarily, we're going to change how much we get paid, what we get paid. And I think as long as we don't freak out and we keep our eye on the ball, that it means I need to be better in my skills. It means I need to be able to clearly articulate the value that I bring to the transaction, that I know my niche, I know my one person, my one problem, so that I can speak to them over and over and over again and reach them and make them know me, hopefully like and trust me, want to hire me for my services, that it's all going to work out in the end. And if we see some there will be all kinds of unintended consequences of this decision, but some of them might be really, really good. Like being able to roll those into closing costs, perhaps, so that the buyer doesn't have to go out of pocket. Who knows? I think, and we're going to see a lot of changes in the upcoming year or two, but change doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means different. All right. Well, thanks for coming and joining me, you guys. I know it was very impromptu, but it's a topic that's on everybody's mind right now. And I just was hoping to kind of settle the people down that are a little bit freaked out about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is a terrible thing and that we're all going to become penniless and live under a bridge somewhere. All right. You guys got this. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.